Dear colleagues and dear participants of the Gaidar Forum, we're delighted to welcome you here. Gaidar Forum traditionally opens the business agenda of the new year and sets the scene for discussions that would take place during the year. And today I'm honored to moderate the discussion about the new business model, cloud capitalism. And before we discuss what cloud capitalism actually is, let me introduce myself and our experts today. I'm Alexey Malinovskiy, head of MasterCard in Russia. We have Maxim Parshin here with us, the Minister for Digital Development and Communications, Deputy Minister for Digital Development, Alexander Torbakhov, CEO of VimpelCom, and I don't think that I need to tell you what VimpelCom is, one of the largest mobile operators here in Russia, and VimpelCom also provides cloud services and has its own cloud platform. Tigran Khudaverdyan, Managing Director of Yandex and member of the Yandex board. Yandex is a tech company that encompasses a number of areas, also has a cloud platform called Yandex Cloud. So welcome to the Gaidar Forum, gentlemen. Before we start discussing cloud capitalism, let's think about this word combination, cloud capitalism. It even sounds a bit unusual, right? So let's start with defining what cloud capitalism is. And cloud capitalism is a new business model that emerged as a result of a combination of databases and internet. Mankind generates enormous amount of data now. This data is processed and becomes raw material, so to speak. Data is the new oil of our century. And companies which work in this area successfully transform data into capital. They sell data, they sell services based on this data, and across the world we have several players. Some of them are leading the market in this area, like Amazon, Google, Microsoft, just to name a few. If we look at the Asian part of our world, there will be Huawei and Ali Cloud. So all solutions that you can find in the global market today are somehow attributed to one of these companies. They invested years of research and billions of dollars into building these cloud platforms. So the question is, do you think somebody stands to deliver something better than that, or will we have to live with what we already have now? EDC Russia mentioned that in 2020, the size of the cloud market services in Russia increased 30% just in 2020, year on year, and the total size of the market is now $1 billion. However, the cloud service market in Russia is growing at the rate below the growth rate in the European markets, and the penetration of cloud services in our market is 12 or 15% as compared to 40% of penetration rate in the European markets. So there is a lot of room to grow for growth. And we have, let's say, in a way, state-controlled capitalism and state-controlled cloud services. So let's take a look what kind of take the state has upon this. Ministry for Digital Development is building a single and integrated cloud platform called GOP. Can we say will it be fair to say that you are building state-controlled cloud capitalism, a model? Well, it's a good question. I don't think we can call it capitalism, because we are about to satisfy the needs that you have, and capitalism is not just about satisfying the needs. It's about providing services, computational services, data storage services. It's about ensuring security of this data. It's about creating the authenticated and trusted environment. And that helps you, as our customers, avoid the need to build data processing centers. And our platform will be focused on providing high-quality services to state entities. So I wouldn't say that we are focused on building cloud capitalism. In a way, private state-controlled cloud is just a tech solution. It's nothing more than that. And we have a clear view of what we have to do. And I personally, I'm responsible for overseeing development of Russian IT area and development of Russian IT products. Recently, there was a ban introduced for municipalities and federal level authorities for building new data processing centers. So this is the way to push them all into the cloud, state-controlled cloud. So they no longer have to build their own data processing centers, or they will have to use private data centers, and that will foster development of this segment of the market, or they will have to go into the cloud. Okay, this definition, the definition that we provided, gives you a lot of room for interpretation, and I understand the approach taken by the state. But I have one question. Talking about access to centralized resources, well, in providing this access, you have to ensure the speed of this access, but you also need to be mindful of the risks, because if something happens to your centralized data storage, then you don't have your data, and you don't have access to a large number of services. What do you think we can do to reduce or mitigate these risks? Well, nobody is saying that all data should be put into one centralized storage. Even from the architecture perspective, this is not the most reasonable solution. We have microservice structure, we have diversified architecture. And if you have these two things in combination, this is what helps you mitigate your risks. Let's say if you have if one federal body stores data in a particular data processing center, that actually means more risks. And we had a lot of cases when these risks materialized and people lost their data. And if your data is being used by other federal bodies, then your data processing center is a bottleneck. Let's say it is flooded, let's say it is damaged, and several federal bodies at the same time lose access to data. And we are focused on minimizing these risks. Okay, so all these fears will be addressed. So the more consumers use this state cloud, the easier it is for them. That's the whole point of it. So I have one device. I have one device, all my data is on this device, and I'm not using cloud services. So if I lose this device, I lose my data with it. If we have cloud storage, and the service is provided by a well-established company which knows what it is doing, which is capable of ensuring security of this data, then I will be a lot more safer if I use this service. Okay, excellent. Just recently I mentioned that the penetration rate of cloud services is substantially below the international benchmark. And state is traditionally one of the biggest consumer and customer for IT services. Mr. Parshin, what do you think? Do you think that this availability of state cloud platform will foster will stir more interest towards using cloud services by different businesses. Just let me give you an example. Recently, we launched availability. We made our cloud services available to SMEs at 50% of the price. And the point here is very simple. We are a digital ministry, and we have no direct relations with tens of thousands of entrepreneurs working in Russia. But we have a contract with a provider of services, like providers like 1C or others. And we found out that we have a lot more of these providers than we expected. We have 29 providers of various cloud services. So if you are a small company, you contact this provider and you can get access to cloud services at 50% of the price. The remaining 50% will be compensated by the ministry to the vendor. This service was launched just in the mid of November last year, and over 100,000 licenses have already been sold, and our KPI for this year is 1 million licenses. And after we did so, we realized what will be the relevant services that can be added to the third stimulus package. So we can give access to cloud services to our startups. That will boost development of the startup, and that will at the same time give us more data that will boost our computational segment. But we need to act on the basis of a clear-cut list of requirements, and these requirements include security and requirements regarding using Russian-made equipment. So we are going to make cloud services more accessible for SMEs. And that's the initiative we have, and it will be launched this year. That sounds great. But every time you talk about cloud, you also remember data and the words that people are saying now. Data is the new oil of our century, and data. The state is currently amassing a lot of data. Do you think the state will be willing to share this data with business? Well, the answer to your question is yes. And I think that there are three aspects to pay attention to here. The first one is that, let me rephrase this. Management is based on data, and I'm responsible for developing IT sector here in Russia, plus IT products. So based on the data we have from our statistical bureau, we do not get the full picture. Our tax authorities also contribute another part of the overall picture. So how do we know that all our initiatives and the stimulus efforts that we take have a good effect upon development of the industry? How do we know that these these efforts correlate with the growth of this sector? So we are getting some of our data from the tax authorities. These are depersonalized tax declarations, and this data helps us see the change over time helps us track this in dynamics. We have many thousands of IT companies here in Russia, and based on various kinds of data, based on the data that we get from tax authorities and other sources, we can see the true picture, the overall picture. That's one thing. The second thing relates to your second question, and it is about access to data. In the first case, and in the case of again, I'd like to rephrase this. We have startups which develop AI applications, and you need data to train AI applications, and they need to get this data from somewhere. And I think this can be reciprocal. And we are discussing the legal framework for that kind of interaction between the state and business. State may share the data that it has, but it will be willing to exchange this data for the data that business has. So it should be mutual interaction. And another point is the regulatory framework. And it's all about regulating the flow of data. And it relates to personal data and availability of personal data. Can I, for example, share my medical records with a company which is building some medical products for my benefit, actually? Currently, this issue is not regulated, but we are working on it. This is what the state thinks. Well, actually, not the state, but the Ministry for Digital Development. But Minister of Digital Development represents the state, ultimately. Let's take a look what business thinks about it. So the Ministry for Digital Development is ready to share its data with you. Do you need this data, or do you have a lot of data of your own? Well, you can never have too much data. I mean, you just can't have it. And businesses and state authorities are trying to get hold of as much data as they can from multiple sources. So on the one hand, we have some indirect way of creating added value. Data enables services which are sold by businesses. And with more data, you can elevate the quality of these services. You can take them up to a different level completely, because these services will be adapted to personal needs of consumers. These services will know more about its consumers. And on the basis of data, they will be capable of comparing, of making comparisons, and that will dramatically change the quality of these services. And that's the key driver. That's the key driver for developing cloud technologies. All that plus reliability. Actually, storing your data in the cloud is a lot more reliable, because architecture of the cloud is such that architecture of the cloud is built around the principle of reliability and safety. So developers sometimes don't have the full idea about how safe it is to store your data in the cloud, because data is replicated and its security is ensured. And data is something that enables us all provide better quality service to our consumers. Yandex, for example, has various partnerships with different companies, and we have API-based interaction, and we exchange data. And this is what has been happening for 5 or 10 years. So what we call Internet is no longer a network. It is no longer a network that we used to use 20 years ago, which was a collection of websites. It is no longer so. We have access to real-time data, and Internet is blended into our real life. So when you have this online and offline blend, then let's say when you buy a car, you would like to verify the records for this car, and you would like to get access to these records, and state is collecting this information, and private businesses are collecting this information as well, because this information has value for the people, because on the basis of this information, you're making physical transactions. That's just one of the examples. Another one is, again, an example. Yandex has an experiment, is piloting the following approach. The Gosuslugi website will verify that you are actually the person, will authenticate you as the Gosuslugi user, and will help you to ensure that on the other side of the on the other end of the transaction, there is another authenticated person who legally owns the asset which is part of your transaction.
So we used the Auto-RU service to check the technologies. This is another example of cooperation, where you have this online service linked to offline in the new quality. And I believe the number of services like this will grow. And you have Yandex Cloud platform, and you started to build up service in Russia for data centers. Does it mean that Yandex is now prone to comparable with world giants like Amazon, Google, Microsoft? Yes, that's the moment where we started to compete with three big American companies, Amazon, Microsoft, and Google, and three big Chinese companies. But there is a big demand for local clouds. And the reason is quite simple. You need local support, local availability, and of course the goal you have in front of the Russian business. In every local country, you have like a stakeholder who, a local one, would understand the goals better, and we are bridging the gap at the moment because Amazon and Microsoft have more resources. They are longer in the business, but I would say that the most important 90% of the path are in the past. And if we would talk about a wide range of businesses, our services are much better. And I would like to give you a case. So if we would talk about the service, why we choose this market segment. For 15 years, we are developing a service for ourselves. And the reason is quite plain, because 30% you spend on clouds, on maintaining this service, so they are related to electricity. And if you are not in the state where you can influence the price of CPUs produced by other world giants, so energy consumption is an important cost article for every data processing center, and you don't have anything measuring the efficiency on how additional energy or electricity is used for one computing unit. So if the world average is 1.6, 1.8 megawatts, reaching the server, but you have the losses. So in our case, it's 1.5, and we spend just 5% because we developed a platform for the servers that allows us to use not just air conditioning but normal conversion. This is our unique know-how, and our data processing centers don't require any air conditioning systems. Apart from offices used for people, and that helps us to bring the cost of the clouds for data centers down. And we supplied our service to China, and they used our architecture to assemble the service. And the entire process of assembling the service in Russia will allow us here in Russia to have the opportunity to build data processing centers without any air conditioning system. Well, that can, of course, affect the cost of services for the consumers who use the cloud services. Very recently, I read a research of Yandex Cloud and EY. There are the two main concerns of losing the data and being dependent on the provider of the cloud services. How can you remove this concern? Okay, so let's discuss both topics. So, as for losing the data in the reality we live in, of course, a nuclear catastrophe is always possible. We can lose the planet. It's the question of probability. But at the end of the day, the architecture of the clouds is where you have a fundamental concern about security of data. Every service in Yandex Cloud, the data are replicated for 3 independent data processing centers in different regions of the country, which really implies that an A bomb needs to ruin 2 data centers, but anyway, the data will be safe. So that's one of the cases for integrity and security. Services initially work that if you have a failure in one place, a network failure, a blackout, flooding, whatever, a problem with the router, it will be switched off, but still served from the other place. The second important thing is the human factor. If we would talk about the data processing center, on average, serving and supporting the data processing center and the architecture, the services, is much more professional compared to an average company. You can always build up something more fundamental for one business, for one organization, but you don't find that number of professionals, and the costs, the expenses are huge, and it's much more viable economically and safer. But people, decision makers, need to understand what's going on. As for the dependence, you have the problem, that concern, and you have developments, services that are between the clouds and the consumers. They are called multi-cloud technologies. When you have a technology, a proxy technology for an intermediate level that allows the business to live in different clouds, it's important for multinational businesses because in different countries, in different locations, you have different quality of clouds, different regulations, and it is really important. If we would talk about our ship, you know, what we need to do to change the mentality, like check item 1, we need to understand why you need to keep your data in the cloud, why it's safer. And I believe that the next page in the history would be in the favor of the multi-cloud, when the businesses will understand that it's beneficial to have a cloud, but it's much more beneficial to live in a number of clouds. I'm sorry, I have another argument. You need to have a look at the history of the humanity. Back in the days, the peasant would produce the bread for himself, and there was a fear that nothing would happen. But, well, imagine that we no longer have the denim, the jeans, or the water supplied by the water pipes. So the businesses will also get used to living with the professionals who would make things much more cheaper. When I was younger, together with our friends, we had a small studio where we developed the websites with M9, and we had to update the disks. There were a lot of technical problems with something broken down. And last week I developed a website for my mother with recipes, and it took it 60 seconds. I pressed the button and nothing else. I just had to type the info in. And what do you think? Well, you also do the slider, the number of CPUs, and in my opinion, it's also important to have a big number of proposals for the market to be competitive, for the consumer to change. Alexander, you have a big cloud platform, and we bought IBS Data Fort company some time ago. You are building your cloud infrastructure for some time. Why do you do it? To help the core business of the company? Or do you pursue any other ideas? No, no way. It's not the idea of helping our own business, because we have to resolve them and process the data processing center in Beeline. And our big cloud is not related to that. Why do we do it? Because it's a natural continuation. What's telecom? Telecom is transmitting and transferring communication to a distance, if you translate it from the Greek. At first, the voice used to be an analog signal, and then it became digital. Then you got the text messages, then images, then videos, and now we transmit a big amount of data for our clients. And the consumer, the client, used to get the data to listen, and the information was never stored. It would disappear. But our clients, individuals and companies, they have the need to store the data. And now we can say that we can go another step and organize a better and super safe storage and processing. That's the logic. And this is what we do together with the Data Fort. And we closed the deal, the transaction last year, and we hope to move faster. And also, one more thing. We keep saying a cloud, but if a company, no matter what the site is, if it contacts Data Fort or Beeline and says, I need a cloud service, no one would tell you, give 53 rubles in cash. No one would understand you, because a cloud service is something abstract, a big number of services under an umbrella. And there can be a different degree of penetration into the company's life cycle, where you can install your applications, store your data, and process them. Some would need environment for processing. Others would need a ready application for, like, accounting. I would not want to install an accounting system and be an admin of the system. Just give me, as Tigran said, I would like to be here in front of my screen, a couple of clicks, and I have an accounting system many times cheaper which will never fall down compared to what your IT people could probably do. And then you have a question, how to protect the data, or how to protect myself from hacking, leakage. And there is a number of services accumulating on top of that. And any cloud service provider, anyway, you have different companies, and there are different specializations. They start to look at niche markets, different parts of the story, and no doubt it will become a mainstream. So 14% is a sad number, but it makes me feel optimistic because there is a huge capacity, huge potential. 86% in front to get to 100%. So, and comparing, I would like to say that the world cloud market is assessed at $333 billion. If Russian economy is 2% of world economy, then Russian market should be about $6 billion, but it is just $1 billion at the moment. So we are lagging behind 6 times. But Russia is much more digitalized compared to other countries, and this is where we are really behind due to inefficiency and mismanagement. And again, the degree of digitalization and the appetite, this is what's going on now. It's not a question for tomorrow, and it's not like a slow mentality. I believe that I can lose the data. We have more objective problems. Many solutions, small and big companies work. They are not prone to being in the cloud context. You cannot transform the infrastructure into a cloud, but the modern software is virtualized, and the level of the digitalization will grow. But I believe that the growth of the services that will develop will also benefit from 5G and the Internet of Things. It will change the infrastructure our businesses work in. Well, of course, 5G will take us to the situation that we're likely to have much more data. But I would also like to join what Tigran said, and also you, Alexey. Data is oil of today, and I was a little bit irritated by this comparison, but then I agreed when I first heard about it. Oil existed with humanity for thousands of years, but only 100 years ago, the genial brain found how to use the oil for the sake of the humanity. So this is the same with the data. Data is one type of raw material that can make this service much more efficient. So it's more about the general character of a human, like in any business, in IT, in other high-tech businesses. You have goals and tasks to resolve, and the human talent to resolve it, to imbibe it. And going back to my favorite statement about the competition, the more stakeholders you have in the market, the higher is the quality of services offered to consumers. And you also have much more talents. But if you talk about the current situation, do you feel the competition in the market? That's a question to everyone. But I would like to ask Maxim how the government sees the situation, whether the competition should be encouraged or whether you should avoid a situation when one of the players is abusing its position in the market. Well, may I begin? I believe, as for the moment, the cloud technologies are in good creative situation. You have in every industry where you have like blue ocean, and the competition is obvious. Where you have human, you have competition. But anyway, when the universe is growing at rate which is that fast that you cannot track what's going on, then looking at different industries where Yandex used to develop, I believe that clouds are at an early stage where you need to run first. Well, you have to push others, but no, it's one of the most exciting time from 1 billion and 14% to 10 and 15 billions. It would be exciting to go that way. I would agree. In front, we have much more volume than to the right or to the left. Instead of pushing, you need to progress. And I would like to tell you, talking to Maxim, that initiatives with the state cloud is correct, and the commercial sector needs to have the opportunity to serve the government and public organizations with high requirements to quality. And I was happy that our data first was certified by the state at the highest level, and we need to support to give an opportunity to different human talents to have the talents implemented. Yes, of course. And I told you that we are talking about developing the commercial data processing center for the public services, for a ban on constructing local government data centers, and this is like thorough way. And we always support the competition, but you need to understand what the competition is about, against whom you compete. If you limit the competition with the level of global players, for the public organizations or authorities, well, the answer would be yes, due to many reasons, and a global player can give you whatever discount you want, given the scale of our market, and a local player with big companies like yours, it's difficult to compete against them, and there should be some sort of limitations for global service. But here, well, the main thing is to develop the competition and encourage investments in this sector, and we see that the demand is high, and we work a lot, and we have like measures in our package for cloud technology development and data processing centers, and we will pay more and more efforts. And I would agree with our colleagues that the prospects are breathtaking. 14%, you need to run fast. You need to find incentives for others to be ready to run. And I realized that one of the trends being developed, the IG agenda. So the Accenture recently developed a research, and the migration of enterprises to a cloud could lead to reduction of energy consumption by 64%, and also reducing the carbon footprint by 84%. And it's harder to raise investment for many businesses if you don't have ESG agenda. And there are many factors to be used. Tigran, yeah, I would like to add something before ESG, something important for everyone. It's about flexibility, we forget about. We all, and I think that we are all in a confusion that the state we are in is the correct one for the business, for the state. And after a year, you realize that goals and tasks we had, they got completely transformed. That means you need new products, new solutions. And what keeps changing, the clouds allow you to be much more flexible. If we discuss the investments, the problem is that no business as such, well, every business tries to predict what is going to happen in a year or two, but let's be honest, these are mere attempts, and most plans never come true. The business grows either faster or slower, and you have to pay a price for that approach. If you fail to build or build slower, and clouds allow you to scale up your business, you realize that you can open anything in 60 seconds without any real investment. And it's much more obvious. Clouds are about efficiency, and I kept telling you about efficiency in the electricity and also the mitigated demand. If you would look at all type of the companies, most of the time service could be idle at night time, and then used at night time.
So even taking into account the time difference between different time zones, some of this capacity remains idle. And you can still use it. You can still use it to train neural networks for other businesses. And the cloud gives you this benefit. So you can buy computing power, computational power at night, and it comes cheaper. It comes at a cheaper rate, and your productivity increases, but your investment is reduced. So that makes you much more flexible, right? Unfortunately, we are running out of time, and we have less than 10 minutes. And I'd like to ask you a question. What do you think would be the key achievement in 2022 from the standpoint of cloud technologies? From your perspective, from the Russian business perspective? And what do you think the situation will be in 2025? It is very difficult to forecast what's going to happen in 6 months from now, and it is much easier to forecast the situation in 3 or 5 years. Mr. Parshin, let's start with you. If our cloud business grows within this year, if it grows by 30%, and it is a fairly ambitious target, but it's still achievable. So if we manage to achieve this target, that for me, that would be an indication of the fact that we're doing something right. So we are helping cloud technologies to develop. We're making the legal framework easier for this. So this is a very clear-cut target to me, and it is much more difficult to forecast the situation in 5 years from now. I have a 1 year ahead vision or even 2 years ahead. But if you ask me about what I think about it, then in 5 years from now, I'd like to see market players which will be capable of competing with our internet giants today. So this is what I would like to see in 5 years from now. So we have Yandex, we have Amazon, we have Google, and we have companies competing with them. And that will be a completely natural and routine situation. That's a wonderful dream. And VimpelCom recently acquired a cloud player, and we need to integrate it into our business, and we expect to grow this business several-fold in the upcoming years. And within these years, availability of cloud services will become a hygienic issue. So, I mean, you will no longer have to choose between operating your own data processing center or using a cloud-based service. Cloud will become a routine part of our life. Whereas for this year, I would like to see the legal framework be made more comfortable for us, the legal framework that would foster more competition in this market. And then 2025 will be a very bright future. Okay, so it's like New Year's wishes, because today, if we look at the old calendar, it's the New Year's Eve today. And today we estimated the size of the cloud market in the world. It's around $1 trillion, and the size of our market is just 1 billion. So our key task is to make our clouds available all across the world, because the market is huge. And to be in a position to deliver good cloud service, which will rival our competitors in quality, you need thousands of developers. And developers come at a high cost today. Building clouds is a very costly business, both from the CapEx perspective and from the product building perspective, per se. So we have been building clouds for 5 years, and we tried to capitalize on the previously developed products, and we have a long road ahead of us. So scale is absolutely important here, and yes, Russia has a lot of potential to grow further in this market. But if we can market our cloud services in other countries, then generally speaking, it will help us invest more in the quality of this product. So that's a task for 1 year ahead, and for 5 years ahead as well. We need to start exporting this product. We need to tap into the new markets. What prevents you from doing this now? And what kind of assistance do you expect from the state? There are world's largest companies like internet giants, which have streamlined product line and which have well-established sales practices. They are super giants. They're dominating in their market niches. But on the other hand, there are many markets and many other countries where customers need local solutions, where customers have business-like needs. When, on the one hand, you need a provider who can give you an access to a wide range of services like those provided by Amazon or Google. But on the other hand, you need these products and services to be tailored to your needs, and you need to have a helpline available. And I don't think there is a magic solution to this. Hard work, daily work. Let us compete. Let us compete for these volumes. Tigran is right in saying that business has the right to compete for this. Give us your volumes. It will be easier for us. Actually, this is what we are discussing, I think, and this is what the state is contemplating. One of the problems, or the reason why we have very low cloud service penetration rate here in Russia, is because we have many state-owned companies which are still not using cloud services. So scale is absolutely important here. And this is one of the ways to stimulate growth. So I think we have touched upon the measures which can fairly quickly boost things in this area, and state can help a lot. And I completely agree, Alexander. As time goes by, cloud service becomes a commodity business, and everyone will clearly realize that they do not need their own server data processing centers. But we're still in the very beginning of this journey, and there is a long road ahead. Thank you very much for today's discussion. We managed to cover a range of issues. We touched upon some practical issues. We tried to look into the future, tried to look several years ahead. And we also talked about technology. And Tigran was right. There is no magic solution to this. Hard work. You need to work hard every day. And Arthur Clarke once said that well-developed technology can be frequently mistaken for magic. And we have discussed this with people who are doing this magic. Thank you very much for this discussion. It was a greatest pleasure for me.